This email is from Darren. He says, "Hey guys, so I know this is a stretch, but what would a 100% PRISM-proof life consist of? If someone really wanted to live under the NSA's radar, what would they have to do technology-wise? I always enjoy listening and thought this would be a thought-provoking discussion. Keep up the good work." Well, thank you, Darren, for the email. So a 100% PRISM-proof life. We talked a little bit about this in the pre-show, and I have a couple of ideas, but I'll let you guys kind of hash out what you were talking about during the pre-show first.
Okay.
If you
well,
can
the simplest
compress
one
that.
that I want to go for, that I'm just going to steal from Ted, is to just move. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, that was Ted's
That's a reasonable
initial reaction. He's like, just get out of the country.
My initial reaction was, I'm not smart enough to answer this question completely, and I need Greg Noakes. And then Ted comes up, and he's like, I know stuff about things. I know stuff about things. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what you're talking about.
Things and stuff and things. Okay.
I started with a simple VPN, and then Ted's like, well, actually, what needs to happen? Go ahead.
So, this is, okay, Darren, take this for what it's worth. I'm not an expert, but from what I know, this would probably be something along the lines of attempting to get as clear of the NSA as possible in my mind. And this is for entertainment purposes only, okay? So,
yeah.
Okay, number one, you'd have to have either a VPN or multiple VPNs. You'd have to have a VPN that works on both your computer and your cell phone, because they're tied together, your accounts are on both, and anything you send is going to be tracked no matter what. So there are services that work on both your cell phone and your computer. It's one service and you get both. It gives you a software to install on each one. If you really want to try and keep yourself clear, then you may actually want to try multiple VPNs, which I think is kind of overkill. Now, should I go into a quick detail onto how the data is trackable or is not trackable, how I feel?
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Okay. All right, so you go to your ISP, and let's say you have Clifton ISP, and so you're using Clifton ISP. They're your internet provider, and you go and you buy ABC VPN service, a random VPN service that has servers in the UK and in Germany and in Kuala Lumpur or whatever. And you sign up and you log in and you say, I'm going to connect through Germany. Well, that means the first hop that you get to see the internet is a German external IP address. So anyone looking at your traffic, any site you visit, when they track you back with their cookies, they're going to be like, oh, this person is coming from Germany. Well, you can't, since you have a VPN, it starts at your computer and it ends at Germany. Any of the distance between there, your ISP, Clifton ISP, the level 3s of the world, the interconnects between New York and London across the sea, they are encrypted, and you can't see what that packet is. Anyone who has, unless they have physical access to the routers and so forth and the interconnects in the back end, if you have physical access and you can see the packets, you can see those packets where they're going, and you can follow them from, let's say it came in Germany and you went out to some web, let's say you went to YouTube over in the Netherlands and your ISP, so it went from the Netherlands to YouTube Netherlands, back into Germany, and it found your external IP address, and then it ran through the back-end VPN to your computer at home. Well, there's a chance that they could follow that packet all the way back to your house, but they cannot see what's in that packet. They could not tell that you were watching Yahoo on the other, YouTube on the other end. They would see it's either a large packet from video, a small packet like a small email, or you're just surfing a blog and reading stuff, or if you're downloading a Linux distribution, which is a large file that you would use a peer-to-peer service to get. They would not be able to tell. They would be able to tell that there's a large amount of data, but they would not be able to read the data inside that packet, so they can't actually tell you anything in there.
And of course, a Linux distribution is the only large file you'd use a peer-to-peer service to download. Of course.
That most people, yes, most people would know about. I mean, other than the people who take 115 megapixel camera pictures of flowers and bridges and then share those amongst their friends on the peer-to-peer, which can be anywhere between
that all the time,
150 to 300 megs in size and file. Yeah, then you got large files. So yeah, those are free to share. Large JPEGs, maybe, or something. Just an idea. Well, so Darren, back to the end of this is a VPN service will give you the clear. It'll encapsulate everything you do from your computer to whatever you choose, whether it's Germany or your front door becomes the UK or your front door you choose to connect to is Kuala Lumpur. Well, once it's out of that, there is some tracking and they can find back this person is going to these websites, and then it'll go back into the VPN, so they can't actually tell it's you. They can tell it's coming from the service that you purchased and the IP address that you chose to come out to the internet. Well, you could even make that even more difficult by buying multiple VPN services. So you connect to a VPN and come out through Germany. And then you go to Germany and you give yourself a post office box and a service, and you buy a German software company and install that on your computer. So then your hop comes from Germany, goes back into a brand new VPN, which would be XYZ, and that one comes out through South Africa. So now you have two VPNs, and that's where people are like, oh, it's routed through so many servers, I can't track it. This is so hard to track, sir. That's where that comes from. You have multiple VPN connections and stuff, and it just becomes a pain in the butt to try and track. But the other side is it slows down your internet a lot. So depending on the front door that those guys have in Germany or South America, that's the speed that you get to surf the internet, plus all the degradation of going from Germany back to your home in Nebraska, wherever you're from. I don't know. I apologize if you are from Nebraska and I just outed you, dude, but whatever.
The one guy in Nebraska.
The one guy in Nebraska that wants to be secure from the NSA. Actually, how about the guy across the street in Utah looking at that giant NSA balloon going, I want to make sure I'm secure.
Yeah. So I think that was a very good analysis from Mr. Lyons. I appreciate that, and I'm sure Darren appreciates that. My reaction was a lot simpler. My reaction was, okay, first of all, you have to think you're being tracked to some degree regardless. You know, putting technology aside, you are being tracked if you're a legitimate U.S. citizen. The government knows a decent amount of information about you, and they can find out a lot through what you're doing. You know, every time you step out of your house, you are subject to surveillance. But when you're in your house, and I know this is crazy to say in 2014, but if you really want to be NSA-proof, you could just put the technology aside. Is that viable for a modern lifestyle in 2014? Probably not. But as we kind of discussed in the pre-show today, anything man-made can be man-hacked. And it just so happens that technology is man-made.
Technology aside.
I'm sorry?
What sorcery are you talking about, putting this technology aside? You're ridiculous.
I know. I'm crazy.
Throw away the electronics. They're all going to turn on you at some point. So just go back to digging ditches and chopping down trees for other people.
Hey, I am already screwed. I live next to a graveyard.
Ooh.
The zombie apocalypse is going to get me.
Yep.
My reaction was similar to Brad's. Basically, I was thinking on the end, so you talked about mesh networks in the pre-show, and I didn't hear you mention much about it in the
I forgot about that.
Actual show. But what I was thinking is the weak link is your ISP in this circumstance, and then you mentioned how you skirt that with a mesh network. So why don't you do your quick definition of a mesh network, which we've talked about before, by the way.
Yep. So you had said, well, what about if the NSA goes to your ISP and says, okay, give me all the traffic and everything that you have on this person? Well, more often than not, your ISP is going to give you that information, going to give the NSA that information. That's part of the deal. Well, to get around that is where people are assuming they can do this. It's a lot of technology, and it's just a theory, and it works, but you still have to have an on-ramp to the internet. So you use a mesh network. So you and a bunch of your neighbors all live about a half a mile from each other, and you all use a spectrum that's free, like 5.8 gigahertz, and you can talk to each other, and you create a mesh network between your router end antenna and your friend's router a half a mile away and his friend a half a mile away from there, and then all these people create this mesh of connected networks. So you could see each other's information if you want, but you create a network of just your routers. And then somewhere along the line, one of those people has a backbone into the internet, and they become your on-ramp into the internet. And that's where you don't have an actual ISP providing you with the internet. You're provided with a mesh network where everybody uses the internet. And then another route is everyone who is on the mesh network also has their own on-ramp to the internet, which means you could run through any of these people, and any of the people in the mesh network could use any other people's mesh network to surf the internet, and you can never actually know who's surfing what because it could go onto the internet amongst many on-ramp or front doors. So you can't really go back and say, well, that always came from Joe's internet. Well, not necessarily, because he shares his internet with Scott and Jill and all these people. So it could have been any of those places. So that's another idea of how people think that they could skirt the tracking of information, or their ISP being forced to hand over their surfing.
But
history.
Not something that one guy, say, if Darren is the person that he's referring to, not something he could implement on his own, just in his own life.
The only thing he can do is find out where the fiber optics are in your town, move really, really close, and become your own ISP, and pay the money to have your own route into the your backhaul of the internet, become a level 1 provider, and take care of the internet yourself, and maybe make the money by sharing it off, by selling it off to other people, and then you become the ISP. But since you become an ISP, then you have to play by the FCC rules, which in turn gives the NSA the ability to come in your door and say, hey, you're playing by FCC rules, rule number 817653229, you have to give us your logs. So
you can't win.
You can't win.
Well, there's
because
also the service aspect of it, too, where if you're using Gmail, it's getting scanned.
Right.
I mean,
anything you're using on the internet.
Even when it comes to, you place an order with my company, well, you just gave me your information, and if the law comes knocking at the door and it's like, I need to know what type of skincare products this person ordered, and then they serve a warrant, well, the information is there, so you better also use fake names everywhere, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
You have to use prepaid debit cards for any online purchase, a throwaway cell phone.
Yeah, I mean, we were just thinking about getting access to the internet. We didn't go beyond that. Actually interacting with other services, other servers and companies, that's where things get difficult too, especially if you provide real information.
Yeah, and there is a level of communication which is, an undernet or an outer net they call. People are talking about that. You can look it up. It's not going to be anything bad. It's called the outer net, and it's just people sharing information, and they're using satellites to create connectivity through everybody, and you only get, I think, like the text. You get a small, slimmed-down version of the internet. You get to see the pages and you get your information, but it's only served through a private company, and it gives you just the data that you want, and it's not the full internet experience. You don't get pictures and video and stuff because it's not that fast. But I think it's called Outernet, and I think it's running
video on the internet. I mean, geez. Let's go back to the ASCII art.
ASCII art. That's awesome.
I know somebody who who was really fed up with Facebook, and particularly after this last psychological experiment that we talked about, where 700,000 users were studied to see if being shown more positive or negative content in their newsfeed made them more positive or negative in terms of what they post on Facebook. And there was a whole ton of ethical questioning of that study because you're playing with people's emotions. And so somebody I know was like, he's had problems with the privacy aspects of Facebook for a while because, it's no secret that Facebook has had some issues, especially with the PR surrounding their privacy issues. But this last psychological experiment or whatever was kind of the last straw for him. And he's like, okay, I'm done. I'm deleting my Facebook account. I'm not using Facebook anymore. And that strikes me as just kind of silly, because this comes from a guy who has a smartphone with GPS on it, uses Gmail, uses all these other free services. He's on Twitter and Google Plus, all the Google services, and every other service you can think of that would be tracking you. And his problem was with Facebook, because Facebook gets this bad rep. But really, if you're trying to live under the radar, you're going to have to disconnect yourself from more than just Facebook.
Yeah. To be fully under the radar, you have to go off the grid, and you have to be a hermit living in a cave somewhere. And that's pretty much the only way you're going to be underneath the radar.
Yeah.